Hey everybody, Economic Ninja here. I hope you're doing great. I wanted to introduce you to a shark. I'm just joking. This is Mark Goodman, my trademark attorney, and I wanted to ask him onto the channel because just finished with a couple of trademarks, and he was a huge help. And there's so many questions around trademarks and copyrights. What's the difference between them? There's so many of you that are starting businesses, so I want to bring Mark onto the channel. And sorry, I had to harass him a little bit because what do they call attorneys sharks, right?
Often, yes. Although now we're being subsumed by the Shark Tank people, right? So no, I'm not.
Well, I look like a shark right now because I have a fin on my top of my head that's called a brohawk. So, you know, I wanted to dispel a lot of rumors because when this is my first trademark that I've ever received, and I was really nervous. You made the entire process smooth. I really appreciate that. You work up here in Reno, Nevada, but you can actually do work all over the country, correct?
Right. With respect to most of my practice, which is the helping people secure trademarks, copyrights, and patents, I can take those cases nationally. Now, I do some other things if you're going to negotiate contracts or that sort of thing that might be more state specific. I'm licensed to practice law generally in California and Nevada, but the core of my work, patent prosecution, trademark prosecution, and copyright acquisition, I can take nationally.
Nice. Well, so I got the trademark on the actual logo and the name Economic Ninja, and I thought it was very important starting this company, this brand early on. I wanted to grab it because of some life lessons I had heard, but I wanted to touch on the difference first between a copyright and a trademark, because you do work in both fields. What are the big misnomers or misconceptions?
So, copyrights and trademarks, and even weave in a little bit of conversation on patents, they are all forms of what we call intellectual property, right? Okay. So the idea is you have property, but it's just this imaginary thing. It's not a physical object. It's not an area of land, for instance, like real estate, but it does operate very similar to, let's say, real estate, almost like an imaginary piece of real estate, but the different areas of intellectual property cover different types of things. So for copyright, what you're doing is you're protecting the work it takes, the creative element to create a book, a movie, a work of art, music, right? Those types of things where it takes a ton of work to create something, but it would be very easy for people to copyright it. Like imagine if you wrote a book and I just took the book and just photocopied it and sold it to people. I mean, that's titanically unfair. It has to be illegal, right?
Totally.
And so and with copyright, you automatically get some copyright protection without even filing with the government or anything. Although I do recommend if it's an important copyrightable material, you should register it ahead of time because you gain a lot of advantages from doing that.
So let's talk about that, because when I filed mine, it was literally, I think, the month the channel monetized. This channel monetized really fast, and that was, I want to say, around January of 2021. And we just received the trademark, I don't know, about a few months ago.
So I was mentioning that with respect to copyright. Now, with respect to trademark, what you're doing with trademark is you're protecting your branding, right? So that's different, even though a lot of times it seems the same, but it's totally different because with respect to copyright, you want to stop people from ripping off your goodwill in the marketplace, right? Whereas with copyright, you're protecting the actual creative work that goes into it.
Gotcha.
So when you think about the philosophical underpinning of trademark law is really twofold. We're trying to prevent consumer confusion in the marketplace, right? We meaning the government and why we have this, right? And we're also trying to make it so, trying to just stop people from unfairly basically ripping off the goodwill that others have earned in the marketplace. I always use this silly vignette, which is, let's say, instead of the whole economic ninja thing, instead of practicing law, let's quit all of that, and you and I start a coffee shop together.
Sweet.
So what are we going to call
coffee.
it? What are we going to call it? How about let's just call it Starbucks? That sounds like a really good. I don't know where I came up with that name, but it just sounds like a really good ring to it, right?
I think it could get us some sales.
Right. It probably could. But of course, everybody gets a chuckle out of this one because they know that if we were to do that, right, we would get sued and get sued on the first day of operation, and they would probably skip the usual legal procedures and just napalm our shop and vaporize it.
Well, and all those attorneys are probably all just the caffeined up.
Oh,
too.
it would be unbelievable.
They're just like, we're gonna get them.
But when you start to think about what the Starbucks company, their cause of action against us would not be copyright or patent or contract or property law. It would be trademark infringement. So that's kind of the vignette in your mind when you understand what trademark law is. On the other hand, let's say someone were to copy one of your economic ninja videos and just play it for their own benefit, you would be going after them under copyright law.
Gotcha. Okay. So what if we called it Star Books? What would happen there? Or maybe, and then put some antlers on there, but we changed it. What would happen there?
So that's an excellent question, and I get this one all the time. Is there unfortunately isn't a bright line here, but trademark does cover more than just literal infringement, right?
Yeah.
You get some scope beyond that, and the standard is, would there be a likelihood that enough consumers would be confused as to whether you were associated or affiliated or sponsored by the Starbucks company. Here's how it generally plays out. If you were to call it Starbucks singular, you're getting sued.
Gotcha.
If you call it Starbucks and it's a coffee shop, you're getting sued and you're going to lose. If you call it, Star Booties, I think you're getting sued. As you walk away, as you step away and it gets less and less similar to it, then it becomes more of an argument where it could go to a jury if you had to take
You were thinking Star Booties, not like Star Booties. Now my mind just went off.
I don't know. We're a little bit off the cuff on that one.
But that kind of stuff happens all the time. People think they're like, oh, if I change it just enough, but then I'm gonna try and glean some of their success that they've built, and maybe make my logo the same color or something like that. But that eventually will lead down a bad path.
It does, and especially when you're up against these larger companies with resources that could just, because the litigation system in our country, most of your viewers will understand this is extraordinarily expensive, and especially as a smaller business or startup, you just want to make sure you avoid that if you can.
Let's talk about how expensive it is. How much? Because you gave me flat pricing, and I really appreciated that. And this might sound like a commercial, but no joke. This isn't a paid video. I wanted to do this video because when me and Mark struck up our deal and he gave me the pricing, I said eventually I'd like to take this to the channel because so many people are intimidated by your career field, if you know what I mean. There's so many people that are like, I don't have the money. So let's talk about how much does it cost?
Okay, so for my program for trademarks, it runs basically about $2,500 kind of out the door for a single trademark with a single class of goods and services, and so it's a type. What I tell people is, well, it's expensive, but compared to most other legal issues that you might need, it's not that expensive, right?
And that was not expensive for me, not because I had a bunch of money, but when I started the channel and I started to see the growth, and some friends came up with an amazing logo. The name, I really did enjoy the name and like the name. I wanted to protect it. So for me, and we're just giving broad generalities, right? That you're talking about. I wanted you to touch on the out-the-door pricing. I like that because so many times people are afraid to get legal help because they're afraid of how much it's going to cost. Someone's always going to be trying to bill you, trying to add more documents, all this kind of stuff, and you were very open and upfront with me.
And this is what I love about this type of intellectual property work they do, is I'm able to quote it on a flat fee basis for nearly all of this work, right? Nice. Whereas, for example, stuff that I have experience with but no longer practice in, the litigation side, those are almost always going to be hourly fee agreements, and the costs just keep going up and up. So for instance, if you do get into major significant, let's say, trademark litigation, patent litigation, or business litigation, it's going to run for sure in the tens of thousands of dollars, and very often into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. The major stuff between large companies actually runs into the millions. So
because they keep that thing going, and you just don't know how long.
And
the
there's
court
just so much
take.
Work involved, and especially if it's a larger case, there's so much on the line. You'll have teams of lawyers working on this, and that's just outside the scope of really, I think, where.
Gotcha.
Let
me do this too, because we're here to film not only for, this is on the Economic Ninja channel, but we're also going to be filming for the Side Hustle course, because there's so many people that are starting businesses right now that want to know how to protect themselves. But at what point would you say, what's the most common questions that you get that are easy to explain to people here so that they could literally get this advice for free from an attorney in the field?
Yeah, it is interesting. There's a lot of just topics I keep going through with a lot of folks, and so I'll share a few of these with you guys, and there's really a lot we could talk for hours on it. So I mean, one is, let's say you have a potential trade name, right, and we're evaluating, okay, so is this a good one to use, right? So there's a couple of potential issues with a trade name. The first is, what is the name relative to what you're selling?
Yep.
Okay, so, and this is something as a trademark, I'm a trademark attorney, but I'm also a business person, and I understand the needs of marketing, sales, and other parts of your business.
Yeah.
So it's just something you put on the scale, which is, but let me put it out there. From a trademark lawyer's perspective, I like to see a trade name that is as far away as possible from describing at all what you're selling.
Okay.
Because that's better from a trademark perspective,
Gotcha.
right? If you, and again, it's a spectrum, right? So again, back to our silly Starbucks analogy. Let's say okay, we're not going to call it Starbucks. That's just silly. Let's open up a coffee shop, and here's what we'll call it: the coffee shop. Okay, you're allowed to do that, right? No one's going to stop you from doing that.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get a trademark on the name coffee shop, right?
Right.
That's
Too
generic.
general.
Everybody can use that, right?
Yeah.
Now, okay, so everybody sort of gets that. What about if we call it hot and fresh coffee? Again, you're not going to get that trademark through.
How about the mean bean?
The mean bean actually would probably be okay, right? You would probably have to disclaim the word bean. What that means is that you couldn't go after someone just because they use the phrase bean without mean in it.
Because there's other coffee shops with the name bean in it.
And coffee beans are an inherent characteristic of coffee associated with it.
Okay.
Right? So as you move further away, then your opportunity to get a trademark through is greater, and as well, the trademark will be stronger, right? And so there's different levels. So the first level is generic, right? The coffee shop. That's generic. You can never get a trademark in a generic phrase.
Gotcha.
If that hot and fresh thing would be considered descriptive, probably.
Okay.
Descriptive, you can get trademarks, but it's very difficult. You have weaker protection.
Okay.
And then the other levels are suggestive. Suggestive is a strong trademark, but there's just the problem is we don't really know what suggestive means all the time compared to descriptive. But here are some examples, right? In-N-Out Burger is a suggestive trademark, right?
Okay.
It suggests that, hey, you get in, you get out fast, but it doesn't really describe what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So that's a strong mark, but the only risk with these suggestive marks is that I've had countless arguments with trademark examiners and even the board on what is the difference between a suggestive mark versus a descriptive. So there's some risk there about different folks' opinions on this. And then the strongest marks are either arbitrary or fanciful. Arbitrary means it's an English word, but it has nothing to do with what you're selling, right? And it's always relative to what you're selling, right?
Okay.
So the example I often use is Apple, right? Apple is a great trade name, an arbitrary one for computers, smartphones, tablets, streaming music services, all that stuff.
Totally.
But let's say the Apple Computer Company said, okay, we're going to leverage our brand, we're going to buy up some orchards and sell apples.
Yep.
Well, in that field, of course, they're generic, and so they'd have no trademark rights.
Gotcha, okay.
Right. So that's an example of an arbitrary, and the strongest is a fanciful mark. If you can just make something up that's not, it doesn't actually mean anything, but then associate with their brand. So for instance, Xerox.
Yeah.
Right? That's not a word, right?
Yeah.
Or, Google, I don't think is a word.
No,
maybe it has to do with
until
that
it was Google. Yeah,
right.
You're absolutely right. Just make something up.
Those are the strongest marks. And the reason why I say this is a balance is that business people often want to pick names that describe what their business is or what they're doing, right? And so the way what I just tell people is, look, if you think that's important enough on the marketing side or whatever have you, that's fine. That's a business decision. But just know that the more descriptive it is of what you're doing, the less likelihood that I can get you trademarked, and you have less power.
So generic is better. Literally just making words up. I mean, and we've seen an explosion of that in the last 15 years.
Right. Especially the tech companies, they always seem like they make up some sort of futuristic sounding thing, right?
Snoob.
Right. All those kinds of things. And really, when you think about it, it makes sense, because if you have a name like Xerox that doesn't mean anything and people are associating with the brand, that means it must be the power of your branding and not just the fact that it means something.
Yep.
Right? So again, it's just something you put on the scale. And I actually think that it can be just as good. I mean, I think that that from a business point of view, you really don't need to have a name that describes exactly what you're doing. You need something that maybe suggestive names can be cool.
Yeah.
Where there's something to do with it, but it really at the end of the day, your branding and your marketing and customer relations will drive that branding, and then you'll have a really strong trademark.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, hey, you're already giving me too many ideas for the side hustle course videos, so we got to get onto those. But guys, look, I wanted to introduce Mark, and I had to throw him off with the shark comment at first because he didn't know that. Because I'm like, I want you to know that this is just a real normal man. Like you said, he's not only an attorney that covers trademarks, copyrights, some patents too.
Yes.
Okay. He's also a businessman, normal guy. And I highly suggest him, and the reason why is because I've used him, and it worked out really well. Again, guys, his company is Goodman Law Center in Reno, Nevada, and he can do all kinds of work around the country. So if you'd like to check him out, I'll go ahead and put some information in the description of this video. So thank you so much, Mark, for doing this. And now we're going to start jamming on more videos for the side hustle course.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much. All right, guys. With that being said,
this was a thrill.
It's your first time, right?
Yes.
Nice. Well, the next one we'll just be leaning back.
Perfect.
You know? All right, guys. That being said, the Economic Ninja